Should swap seats as well, just to make it really confusing.
And keep it consistent.
The problem is, a lot of cyber can be seen as boring. And that is an honest side, I'm not having to go, really?
I don't think we've seen enough change in our industry. We exhibited at an event a couple of weeks ago. If you went to that event 10 years ago, the event would have been exactly the same, other than there being no reference to AI on every single stand.
We should always get better. You know, as kids, you know, if we did exactly the same thing, we'd always be falling over. Because I set off walking, first time I tried walking, I guarantee I didn't get very far, I fell over. If that's all we're ever going to do, that is not the way we move forward.
We're here again to talk about launching our own podcast, which we will be recording here in the weeks and months that follow. We made the decision to call that podcast Disruptor. Now, I think that the reason why we've done that is because we see ourselves as a real positive disruptor in the cyber industry. David, from a industry perspective, why do you think Utopia Cyber UK could be seen as a positive disruptor?
I think we've got an opportunity to try to help organisations look at the costs for cybersecurity products and tooling, right? There's the way the market operates as it stands at the minute is you've got resellers, distributor networks sitting in the middle of a conversation between a sales organisation and a purchaser. Yeah, that was okay when cyber was new 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? But it's a bit irrelevant now, because what I find as somebody who talks to a lot of vendors and buys cybersecurity tooling and product is the resellers and the distributor networks aren't really offering value any longer like they maybe used to do. They're only really aiming to promote the things that they get the biggest kickback from. We think we can take a little bit of cost out of that, help organisations lower the cost for entry into cybersecurity space, and increase profit at the vendor side because they don't have to deal with the distributor and reseller network.
I think that, to me, I've always looked from a sort of entrepreneur perspective and looked at sort of developments in the last sort of 10, 15 years. You guys are technology side and you might look at inventions and things. I always looked at things like Uber and Just Eat, organisations that looked at things we did every single day. Okay, always ordered cabs, we'd pick up the other pages and order a takeaway, and thought, right, how can I take something that already exists, the model, and make it better and make it more efficient?
Easier.
And that's what I looked at. And just, I think the whole point of this podcast, maybe from the disruptor point of view, is looking at the status quo.
Yeah.
Looking at, well, we've done this for years. The way in which organisations source and procure cyber technologies and services hasn't changed in the 20 plus years that we've now been in the industry. So what we've done with this is try to be disruptive and challenging people. Well, why? Look at the way you do things, look at the status quo and think, right, well, how can we do things differently? And when we talked about that the first time we talked about doing the podcast, I was like, well, isn't that just a great idea for a podcast as a whole?
Absolutely.
Because that's pretty much what we're looking to do. But it'd be great to bring guests on that really feel that this status quo needs to be challenged in cyber, but also in other industries as well. I mean, Lee, you've been on a lot of podcasts and you've been asked to do the podcast.
Yeah.
And why are you passionate about it, and what are you kind of hoping that you can get from this?
One of the things for me is getting across it in a different way, because the problem is a lot of cyber can be seen as boring. And that is an honest side, I'm not having to go, really? But let's get right, we love it, but other people don't. So for me, bringing across to people what is going on in cyber in a more relaxed manner is better. And one of the things is bringing through different technologies that people won't even know about. Because let's get right, the amount of times I just say, we'll speak to a reseller who will come along and go, here's the product you need to look at. We're looking at websites, find out about it. We're not talking to the inventors.
You don't bother.
You know, we don't know why they've created it. We don't know the benefits. We want to bring those guys in front of us so we can ask them questions about why is it important? What is their product bringing to us?
Yeah.
Why should somebody look at their products and not the standard product that they've been buying for the last 10 years?
Tell me why you're bringing a product to me that's for a problem I don't know I've got yet.
Correct.
You know, new and innovative organisation.
And that's why I see a podcast going, is the fact that we're getting that engagement, but in a relaxed manner.
Yeah.
I think for me, what I like about the disruptor conversation is it doesn't necessarily have to be a technology or a vendor. In fact, what we could probably do with bringing them on is say, talk around the disruption that you're making, but don't no sales pitch.
Yeah.
Tell us about the impact that you're making, what you do. Obviously, can reference who they work for and whatever, but I'd prefer it to be quite, talking about the impact that they're making. We've recently started, working out of the Dish sort of venue in Manchester. Lots of startups.
Yeah.
And everyone seems to have a really big sort of ethical and social impacts on why they're doing what they're doing. So there's lots of great sort of guests there for us. But also, it doesn't need to be you're selling something. If you're making, an impact in regards to changing something within the cyber industry and making a positive sort of social or impact or in any other way, or doing something really positive for charity or something like that, we want you on the podcast.
Correct.
That's it. And I think therefore there's lots of opportunity for that. I don't think we've seen enough change in our industry. We exhibited at an event a couple of weeks ago. If you went to that event 10 years ago, the event would have been exactly the same, other than there being no reference to AI on every single stand. So I think what we're doing with this is really saying to anyone out there who's in the industry, if you've looked at the industry and go, right, how can I make a positive impact and a positive change? Come and talk about how you've done that, and we'll give that sort of platform for doing it, and that's quite exciting.
Yeah, exactly. It's moving down from the bullet points, because at the moment, people just looking headings and they're just saying, oh, that's the next thing. You mentioned AI there, but everybody's saying AI now. So how do you know which product to look at? Which technology is going to give us the biggest bang for buck?
Yeah.
Realistically, I know we're not American, but what's the saying, isn't it? but realistically, how do you find out that? At the moment, you can't. It's almost impossible. Bringing these people in to talk to, I like the idea that they're not going to no longer sell their products, but they're selling their idea, why it's important. That's the whole point. Because let's get it right, people will want to be listening to this because they're going to hear a different way of delivering it. And that's a massive thing.
Yeah, I think this, as an organisation, we are not doing sales pitches.
No.
You come to this event, even the events that we do, the sales pitch is limited to a certain amount, and then the rest is generally about industry discussion. I think, in a way, another way in which we're disruptive that we have to touch upon is our commitment to philanthropy and providing for good causes. I think a big part of that will be getting some of those on this podcast as well, and talking around how they're making an impact, how they're challenging the norm. It's something that really, I think, differentiates us from all other organisations in the UK that live in the cyber industry. I'm really keen to hear about some of these charities that we're helping and what they're doing, how they're using those funds, and how that's helping them to be disruptive.
And giving them a voice. Because realistically, we want to get to the point where people are listening to this because they're understanding things are changing.
Yep.
And that's fundamentally what we want to do. We get across the fact that the status quo is no longer the correct thing. We have to look at moving things along. And as you say, that could be the charity saying what the benefits they've got, or how they want to do it. But it could be a supplier and regarding how their technology is making changes.
Yeah.
Or going back to, even an organisation that is doing things differently, that don't have a voice or don't have the ability to be able to talk or put on a podcast.
Yep.
David, as a topic, what sort of disruption, considering where the industry is right now, sort of disruption would you like to see? It could be at a technology level, service level, or whatever, or anywhere. What sort of disruption, positive disruption, would you like to see in the industry?
I think as we move into the cloudification of absolutely everything and AI and automation, it's going to become niche boutique organisations that are able to support bigger businesses with the thing that they really need. And that bringing and finding those smaller organisations is going to disrupt the bigger players within the market. I work in an operational space. We see a lot of SOC providers and operational centre providers. But I can't see those guys who are relatively stayed in their ways continuing to be able to accelerate through the changes that are coming with automation and AI. So there's going to be some players out there that we find that have just got it right. Yeah. And who knows who they are yet. I'm sure they'll be coming through pretty soon.
I think if we look along the lines of some of the larger outsourcers, not going to make names in the scenario, a lot of the times they've been doing that same thing for years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's the right thing. The world has moved on.
Might be for some organisations, but it's not for all of them.
And this the problem is the fact that you end up in a situation where you're buying the products that is made for everyone, not made for yourself. And looking along the lines of we're going to focus on those entities where it's doing something different. And let's get right. I've previously worked for an organisation in the travel industry that was proud of the fact that there was a disruptor. Why? Because things needed to change. When I grew up, we'd go down and go and get a booklet from the local travel agent, and then you'd look at that and you book the holiday in there. Who does it now? Hardly anybody does it. It's a change. Cyber industry has to change in the same way because these new technologies are coming out at speed. And one of those might be the perfect tool for you and not the legacy tool. And we want to give those organizations a platform to discuss that.
Absolutely.
I think, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I think there was a lot of disruption in that time in the sense of, if you go up, like even 15 years ago, if you wanted a SOC service, again, won't name names, there was probably like 6 or 7 companies you'd go and speak to. That RFP process would be quite simple.
Probably talk to them all, brought them all in and threw them all out at some point.
But now there's probably hundreds.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's about, there's not enough business in the market for all of them to succeed. But I do agree. Also, if you went back 15 years, if you talked about the idea of giving all of your security software to one provider, and if I won't say the provider's name, but you know what I mean, the idea of putting everything through them would have been completely insane 15 years ago.
I'm trying to work out which one it is.
But let's say, or maybe just for the LA podcast, I think right now, as David said, I think there is the emergence of smaller organizations. I think people are liking that increased level of customer service, that not putting all your eggs in one basket, and literally that sort of consolidation is right in the right area. But as a whole, working with specialist organizations, and in some cases, smaller local organizations, is more beneficial than working with the global players. I think that's something, that level of disruption, I'm quite looking forward to seeing.
And my comment there regarding it is the fact the reason why I say I don't know which one it is, because there is that many legacy organizations that are saying, we're just going to give you the old product, just do it, we're just going to continue. Have you actually looked at the newer ways of doing things? For me, that's really, really important. We all want to be, do we want to be a transformational CISO? Or do we want to be somebody that's going to tick box and do exactly the same for the rest of the year? We can't. We've got to transform. The rest of the industry is changing. We have to keep up with it. And that is not doing exactly the same things with exactly the same suppliers that are doing exactly the same way of doing stuff. Everything has to change.
Dude, what sort of guests would you like to see on the Disruptor podcast? Not specific names, or what type of person are you looking forward to?
I'd like to see somebody from the sciencey community talking to us about how they're disrupting something in their niche little space, right? That'd be really interesting. The world of sport, maybe, but I think the science angle for me, not necessarily the cyber angle, that'd be great.
I was hoping he was going to say me at this point.
No,
there you go.
No, it's not like that.
For me, I would just like anybody to demonstrate what they are doing that's different than the norm, but making a benefit, because change is what we should always be doing. We should always get better. As kids, if we did exactly the same thing, we'd always be falling over. Because I set off walking, first time I tried walking, I guarantee I didn't get very far, I fell over. If that's all we're ever going to do, that is not the way we move forward. You learn from your mistakes, and you learn regarding what you need to do. All this stuff is embedded in ourselves. Why are we thinking that technology and systems in this planet continues in the same way? We have to change.
I think if we're going back to cyber, for me, something that's really important, and it is something that I genuinely, why I love what we're doing with Utopia Cyber UK, is the social impacts.
Yes.
I think that immediately when I speak to somebody, there's people in Dish that I mentioned before that I speak to, and immediately when they say what they're doing is actually benefiting the greater, listen, you all benefit in the roles that you do. You're securing your organizations against cyber threats. That's a really valuable thing. But when you can do something where you're delivering that task, but also adding some greater good to the world, I'm really quite inspired to see what people can get on talking about that real level of positive social discourse. So exciting times ahead, guys. Very much looking forward to it. And we'll start with our first one in a couple of weeks.
Yep, sounds good.
Excellent.